Oh, hello, hello. And we are live. As always, let's double check. Hello, everyone. It is wonderful to see you all today. Can you believe Wednesday, middle of the week, the first full week of January? But yes, it's so wonderful to be back here. I think I'm live. Let me just double check. I should be live on Janome Canada. Yes. Oh, there we go. Should be live on Janome Canada Facebook, Janome Sewing Machines Facebook, and Janome HQ YouTube, and Janome America's YouTube channel. Yes, it is wonderful to be back to share the Janome love, regardless of where we are in the world. Oh, lovely, and my sister Deb is here. Oh, fantastic. Yes, hello. It is great to see you all. Thank you so much for joining me again today. My name is Michael Smith, the National Education Manager of Janome Canada, coming back to you live from my palatial estate here in Collingwood. I'm about 2 hours north of Toronto, and happy to be back to share some more little sewing tips and tricks, and again, getting our sewing rooms back in shape to get organized. And this little project that I have for you today, especially we're in a new year, and many times that's a great time for us to try a new technique. We always get questions of people saying, oh, I want to get into making a quilt. And, how can I start? Where is a good place to start? It can be very overwhelming getting into the whole quilt making world. And we see all these beautiful quilts and you think, wow, I can't do that. Well, you baby steps, one step at a time. So I'm going to show you, if you would like to get into piecing together quilts, or especially maybe if you're a seasoned sewist and quilter, but you're looking for a quick, easy project to make, looking for a great scrap busting project to use up all those little bits of maybe some Christmas fabric left over, or again, scraps of all kinds, then this string quilt is the perfect quilt to do. So, hello, everyone. Oh, it's great to see. Oh my gosh, from again, all over the world, lots of Canada and the US, of course, but even oh, we get people from all around the world. This is where I love technology when it works correctly. For example, yes, let me get into my camera here, because as always, I have a lot to share with you. And I know the time will go by so fast. So yes, look at all the fabulous little goodies I have to share with you. Again, I'm sewing on my fabulous Continental M17 here, CM17, but really this quilt could be constructed on any machine. Yes, I love scrappy projects too. Yes, thank you. Oh, it's great to see everyone. Yes, from Australia. Hello, hello. So string quilts. What is a string quilt? Well, this is a string quilt. Little bits of fabric. Do you have little bits, long, skinny strings, or they don't necessarily have to be skinny, but long strings of quilts? Again, our fabric, as we're cutting out garments, maybe some trousers or skirts or, whatever, we always have those long pieces of fabric that, again, what do we use? We save everything, or at least I do, all different types. These strings, as we call them, long little pieces of fabric. Well, we sew them all together here on a foundation. Now, in this case, I used muslin. These lighter strings are muslin. And then the fabrics, if we can get in really close, this quilt sadly no longer exists. So I just have fabric here, photograph to show you. But this yellowy satin fabric, for example, came from some costumes I made in high school. This little floral print was from this little maternity dress I made for my sister, for example. This little brown paisley fabric was a shirt. I studied fashion design in college, and in my first year of college, my sister, my middle sister here, Cindy, announced she was going to have this baby, and I thought, oh my, what am I going to do? I'm in college, I'm studying fashion design, I don't have money, but I need to do something for the baby. So here we are, the first Christmas. This is 1991. There I am. I actually have hair, but it blends into the Christmas tree. So here we are, Christmas 1991. My niece was born in October. So here we are at the first Christmas. My mother is off to the side holding my niece. So here, the very first quilt I made, simple, using some garment fabric, some cotton fabric that I had just in my little stash. The muslin came, again, that I had in school. And I made this string quilt. Very simple, very easy. My very first quilt, and that was 33 years ago. I can always remember because my niece, the recipient of this quilt, is 33 years old now. And this was made on my very first little Janome machine, mechanical machine, 5mm machine. So again, we don't need super fancy, expensive machine to make this string quilt. So when my niece, that first niece, I now have 3 nieces, but when my eldest niece turned 18, I made this quilt. She needed a bigger quilt for her bed. So I made all these blocks. These are so fun to make, so fast and easy. So here is the actual block. They could be any size, whatever fabric, whatever size you want to make. This is the actual block, and I sewed, again, 4 of them together in this case. So it makes this little sort of box kind of pinwheel shape here of 4 together. Now I happen to put a little sashing strip in between, and there's another set of 4, but you can eliminate this sashing strip in between and just, butt these all in rows. Super simple to make, make it baby size, make it queen size is what I made for my niece. And then these, I just made blocks and blocks and blocks and blocks. They're so fun. So these were all left over. So then I decided, fine, I'm going to make myself a quilt for a change instead of giving them all away. So this was out of 1930s reproduction fabric, which I loved. And instead of muslin, which is where I used in the older example was muslin, but this is some of that tone on tone, in this case, white on white fabrics with the prints. I even mixed up the different prints. So it's perfect to use for scraps. Use a little bit of whatever. It is so freeing and so fun. Now we can practice our 1/4 of an inch piecing. So if you don't have scraps, then certainly, again, especially Christmas fabrics, all your holiday fabrics. If you don't have any fabric now, I would say go to your Janome dealer. A lot of them sell fabric. It's a great time to get a good deal on some Christmas fabric. And you can make this string quilt for yourself or as a gift for next Christmas. So how cool is that? And again, any size, any machine, we can practice our 1/4 inch piecing in the process to refine our quilt making skills. But again, we really don't have to get hung up on being so precise. There's really nothing to match. So here is my square, whatever size square you want. In this case, this is going to finish at 10 inches, this square, and it could use any kind of fabric, even cut up an old sheet. Now, this is foundation piecing, as it's called. You don't have to make this strip on the foundation. It does make it easier, though, especially as a beginner. In the olden days, these used to be, the phone book. Remember when we had the big phone books, or even newsprint? There's some old antique quilts. They sewed on everything. They made use of everything. So even newspaper. But again, you don't have to do this with the foundation. It just is kind of cool. That way, it just adds a little more stability to your piecing. So I made my block. In this case, it's 10.5 inches is what I cut out this foundation square. And then when I do all my piecing, I'm actually going to make my block a little smaller. I'm going to trim it up, square it up to 10 inches. And this is how, by starting out with a bigger piece, then we can, again, refine our pieces by cutting out a bigger piece, and then we sew it all together. And sometimes we get a little distortion when we're sewing. So that's why I like to make the pieces bigger and then trim them down. So in this case, whatever kind of ruler you want, I'm just going from one diagonal across the diagonal here, from one corner to another. I have this very handy ruler here that has a center line. So I have lined up my ruler here along that long diagonal line, point to point, and I'm just going to draw with a pencil on either side. Now, this could be any measurement you want. In this case, I'm making 2 inches. And why it's 2 inches? Well, simply the width of my ruler is 2 inches. So I have the center line here from, again, point to point. And then I'm just going to draw on one side, you know, there is my 2-inch lines. Very simple. Again, it could be whatever kind of measurement you want using whatever kind of tool. I've had this since I was in college, so 30 years. So again, we just make our lines here. So then that is step number 1, and again, any size. So then we take our piece like this, and you see with my pencil line here, and we don't have to worry about it showing because I'm simply going to take my strings. And in this case, oh yes, I have some leftover Christmas fabric, but like this Janome 100th anniversary fabric, for example, this isn't Christmas fabric, but it kind of goes with, there is some red in this print, and then with the sewing prints, I thought it was cute. The string quilt, any kind of scrappy project. Again, this is not technically a Christmas fabric. I had it left over, so why not put it together? Even here, like this tone-on-tone, green fabric, it's technically not Christmas fabric. It wasn't part of all this collection, but the string quilt is a great time to use up all your little scraps. They all go good together. And even, again, little pieces, we can use them here into the corners. Or if you have a little triangle piece left over from something else, again, this can be sewn on the corner. So you save everything. This is such a great, again, scrap busting project. So what we're going to do, again, on either side of our pencil line here, we're just going to take our string, and we want to make sure, will the string cover from one point to another point? So we're just going to butt this string along that pencil line, and we're going to sew approximately 1/4 of an inch. Now, it doesn't really have to be 1/4 of an inch. Doesn't really matter what the seam allowance is, because when we fold this back here, again, we want to make sure our fabric covers this edge, the raw edge here, and then we're going to trim it down later. So again, this is a really fast, easy project. We don't really have to worry about accuracy so much because we're not going to match any of these strings. Do you see here? Again, I'm not worried about matching anything. These can all be different sizes. Again, nothing is matching in here. So this is why it's so forgiving. But we can try to practice sewing in a straight line, following that pencil line. And there's many different 1/4 of an inch presser feet. So depending on your machine, sometimes we can move the needle position over to our machine. Other times the needle is fixed in the center and we may have to switch out the presser foot. So in all of our Janome machines, we have the A foot is the regular zigzag foot. But did you know, here in my 9mm machine, at least, it's about right where this metal meets the plastic is 1/4 of an inch from center needle position, just about right over there. It lines up again approximately where the plastic meets the metal. That is 1/4 of an inch. So I could use this foot with center needle position and then line up my strip again with that little notch, that little groove in the foot there. So I could use that if I couldn't move my needle over. Another option, double check with your Janome dealer. For example, there is this fabulous, for 9mm machines, there is this clear view 1/4 of an inch seam foot. That is the OM foot, clear foot. And again, I demoed these on the A to Z with Janome series that's on the Janome HQ YouTube channel. This is the OM foot, an optional foot. You look at this nice long guide to guide our fabric up against. So again, it helps us with our accuracy by keeping our seaming straight. especially at high speeds. And you'll see that I just have a little hole there for the needle. So this is center needle position, and then I'm going to line up my fabric against that long metal guide. So that's how I can get a perfect 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And again, full instructions on the back of the blister pack as well. So that's an option. Now, another option for, this is for 9mm machines, but also for some 7 and 5mm machines. This is the OV foot. It is also clear, and you'll see there's all these handy little tick marks here to use the foot. The cool thing about this OV clear view foot and guide set, there is a 1/4 of an inch guide here, but I can just loosen this screw and remove that guide if I would like, and then I can put this guide on, and this is a ditch quilting foot now, and I have that center rudder there, so I can do ditch quilting with this. So this is a multi-purpose foot. We can use it in 2 ways with these 2 guides. Again, one is for 1/4 of an inch, the other is for ditch quilting. And this is the Clearview quilting foot and guide set. And it comes for 9mm machines as well as some 7mm machines and the top loading, 6.5, 5 millimeter machines. So double check with your dealer there. Now, some machines, again, we've got the fabulous HP high performance needle plate with HP foot. That, again, we've got that left needle position. Now, this is only for some select 9mm machines. So this is why I'm not going to demo this today, but this is, that perfect 1/4 of an inch that a lot of people love. So this is an option that comes included with some 9mm machines, but is also available separately, again, if your machine is compatible with this. And there's lots of blogs on Janome Life blog about that. So what I'm going to use, though, is the O foot, and all of our machines have an O foot. One has a guide, and then there's even an O foot that does not have a guide. So it's whatever you want to use. Now, most of the time when we recommend doing our piecing, we want to use the straight stitch needle plate with that center hole. That'll just help the needle, not push the fabric down in the zigzag needle plate. So many of our machines either come with a straight stitch needle plate, or you could get it separately from your Janome dealer. So double check with your dealer if there is a straight stitch needle plate with that center hole available for your machine, whatever one it is. I'm just going to keep my zigzag needle plate on because, again, we can use it. It's just always recommended that straight stitch needle plate just makes it a little easier. We don't have to worry about, again, that fabric being mashed down in the needle plate opening. And I'm just going to attach the 1/4 of an inch foot here with a guide. I personally love having the guide. Now, my needle is in centered needle position, so I don't really want to use this foot with this center needle position. But again, certain machines, can we move our needle position? Here on the CM17, we've got these knobs here, or we've also got, it is a touch screen, 2 touch screens here. Regardless of your machine, your regular utility stitch, again, with a straight stitch with a center needle position, or again, can you move that needle over to the right in this case? Now, in certain machines, especially in our sewing applications mode, we go into our quilting category, and we've got various, even a 1/4 of an inch default settings as well. So again, the machine does some thinking for us when we get into our quilt making. But again, I'm just going to stay with our regular ordinary sewing. Again, let's pretend, again, I'm back on my 5mm mechanical, very simple machine, and I could move my needle position. I'm just going to move it over. Typically, our 1/4 of an inch piecing is set to 8.3 on our 9mm machines. I like moving it over just a little bit more to 9.0, so that gives me more of a little scant 1/4. So my needle's all the way over to the right because I'm then going to use this 1/4 of an inch foot. And then our regular stitch length here is 2.4, but when we do our piecing, I like personally going down to 1.8. It's a tighter stitch, so we don't have to worry about our seams coming apart. We don't have to worry about back stitching or lock stitching. So what I'm going to do, again, so simple, is here is my pencil line, and I'm just going to run my strip against that pencil line. And now just simply go down one side. And again, if I veer off a little bit, it's not going to be the end of the world. It's such a forgiving pattern, but this is where it's a great project just to help, again, get more comfortable with your piecing. So after I finish this, then I fold it over. Now, great if you have a little portable iron next to your machine, and then you can iron this out, press this out so it's nice and flat. This is also a great exercise to help you with your pressing technique. Typically, when I do my piecing, then I press. I don't iron, I just press my seam the way I sewed it. That helps kind of embed the thread into the seam line here. And then with the tip of the iron, I just move here ever so gently and then press open this seam. I don't really want to mash this down. We can get a lot of distortion that way. Just with the tip of the iron, pretend this finger is the tip of the iron. I have a big iron that is not near my sewing rooms or not near my sewing table, so I can't demo it for you. But so if this were my iron, again, just the tip of the iron here. So this really helps your pressing technique, because your seaming and your pressing definitely can affect the accuracy of all of your piecing in the end. So really simple to do. You could use like a little wooden iron to just kind of flatten this seam. So there, I am done. Then I can take a piece, and again, it doesn't matter what size. We just want to make sure when we do our piecing, is it going to cover these raw edges? And I say, yes, it will. And we just keep doing this down and down and down. It is so fun, so fast, so simple. And again, I'm trying to keep my fabric butted up against that metal guide, just so it's a little bit more accurate. But again, it really doesn't matter what our 1/4 of an inch or what our seam allowance is. Again, I'm trying to refine my 1/4 of an inch, but it doesn't really matter. It could be 1/2 of an inch even. It's more consistency as opposed to being really accurate. You'll see I got a little bit of puckering here in my seam, so that's why, again, I like to just press the seam as it was sewn, and then I flip this over. So as we're adding in our strings, we just want to be careful. I don't want to get, as I'm getting into the corner, I don't want to have like a really narrow little string in the corner. Like I don't want to have, you know, this, if it's too small into the corner. So I try to keep my small pieces a little more where they're a little bigger. And then as I get into the corner, again, that's a perfect time to add like this piece, for example. So when I flip it out, I know, yep, that's going to fill in the corner nice. It just will make a less bulky corner. Because then when we are done, again, piece, piece, piece. So it looks like this. So it's all raggedy here. So when we're done, and you'll see how beautifully everything is neatly pressed, all the seam allowances all neatly pressed, and then we're going to lay this down on our cutting mat. And then with your square up ruler, you're going to square this off. I like to just shave off a little bit of the white. So in this case, my squares were again, my original square was 10 inches, and then I'm going to square it down, or 10 and a half, and then I'm going to square it down to 10. And then you will see, oh, when I grab them, we end up with all these little bits. You see a little bit of my white foundation square that, again, I squared this down to 10 inches. So you get a little bit like this. Now, some of these pieces, oh, I'll probably save this guy here. He's big enough to use. Maybe some of these little ones I'll finally, you know, throw to the trash. But as they get bigger, oh yes, you still use, like that is still a good piece. So I cut this off and I'll put this on another block. So we just keep piecing more and more and more. and you end up with all these little bits. But again, this is why it's so fun. You use all of this. To me, it's like gold. So again, here is our finished block. Fold it over. We put our square up ruler here, trim it off so it's all nice and neat. Like that. Isn't that beautiful? And then this is the really fun thing is, oh, we can audition and rotate them around and around. You basically want, this was my, foundation piece here. So then we have our two foundation pieces at this place, they form like a chevron. But it's wonderful because we really don't have to match anything. Now, if our sewing is consistent, these pieces kind of should match because I started with a 2-inch strip here and a 2-inch strip there. So these pieces should really match, but it's totally fine if they don't, because again, this is so freeing. So as we can rotate all these blocks, you just make, again, block after block after block, and then you decide how big you want your quilt. So again, now I'm just going to sew my 1/4 of an inch. Now, another thing we could do as well, if we don't have a dedicated foot with a guide, I love using, for example, this is the metal cloth guide. It comes with a number of machines or is available, again, separately. We could maybe use this metal cloth guide or whatever cloth guide you have with your machine. That will help as well keep your strips accurate. So as I go in again, oh, my time, I could just spend all day doing this. It is so fun. So again, because I'm using that small seam allowance, I don't have to worry about my seam coming apart. I don't have to worry about back stitching or lock stitching. So we would just keep on. If I had another set, we just keep on loading in our blocks one after another after another. If you, again, these are smaller pieces. So instead of this, I think I did 8-inch blocks. So that whatever block I started with, again, that foundation piece. So whatever size you want to start with. So in this case, instead of a 2-inch strip down the center, I just did it a 1-inch since my blocks are a little smaller. But again, how fun is that? And this is where, again, you want to leave your bigger pieces in the corner so it doesn't end up so bulky. Now, even here, do you see that little seam? You can barely see it, but there is a seam here. I didn't have enough of my foundation piece anymore, so I thought, great, I'll just seam my foundation piece. And I pressed this seam allowance open so it's a little flatter. And again, you really don't see it. This is the true art of quilt making. They used up everything. Yes, it's wonderful to go to the store and buy all brand new fabric and everything, but a lot of the times, again, as I started, I was in fashion design school at the time, and I just used what I had. So this is totally, you can piece your foundation bit together as well. So it really is very forgiving. So there we go. Now I'm done my block, and again, we would love it if, oh, look at that. That is a beautiful match right in this corner here, but it doesn't have to be. If it's off a little bit, don't worry about it. This is so freeing, so forgiving, especially if you want to make maybe some charity quilts to donate. This is a great project. Use up the scraps, doesn't take a lot of money, and then you can freely give it away. Then it's good, and they're not going to be worried, hey, did those seams match? So here you just choose to press your seam. You could press this seam open, but I thought it was easier just to press it to one side. So again, we're going to press the seam the way it was sewn. Then I'm going to open it up here and just press it to one side. So that turns out very beautiful. So all up here, I didn't worry about these strings matching at all. Again, great if they can match right here, but if not, don't worry about it. So simple and easy to do. Now, when we get into our rows then, pretend these are my rows. Again, it gets a little harder to me to show. So pretend these are my rows. As I piece my rows together here, and again, we're just going to fold right sides together. And then when I sew these down with 1/4 of an inch, or again, whatever my seam allowance, when I sew them down, I just butt one block after another, however many blocks long that I want my quilt to be. And I hold them together here by these little pieces of thread. I really don't like pinning personally, so I hold them together like with the thread. So if this were my pieced block, let's say, and this is my pieced block. So then I open my block. So I do long vertical rows first. And then when I come to do this cross row, I like folding and pressing my seam allowances, do you see? So one seam allowance goes one way and the other seam allowance goes the other way. So this way they are going to nest together, or some people say they kiss together, or they're butted together, they're locked together. So this way it forms a nice match, and it's a little flatter this way too. So I don't have the bulk of those two seam allowances together. I fold them over like this. So then when I go to now piece this, seam this, I have this seam allowance you see is up, this seam allowance is down. And I like having it this way. So this seam allowance that's pressed up, it just kind of works its way in. It just kind of locks itself in. I can feel how flat those seam allowances are. So it's really good if you take a little bit extra time not to, I just want to make sure my needle doesn't come unthreaded. If you just take a little bit extra time in your pressing, so everything is nice and flat, and then you alternate your pressing. So that really helps keep things flat. You have your little stiletto, your seam ripper, whatever, to help you keep that seam allowance. So this way you avoid the seam allowance twisting when you do it like this, when you offset it, and the seam allowance that goes down is underneath, so it's going to naturally go down anyway. The seam allowance on top, again, I used my stiletto to make sure it didn't flip over. And then by doing that, it really just helps. Again, everything stays nice and flat. And then it helps you look at that beautiful match. Now, again, it doesn't have to match so beautifully, but boy, it sure helps. So again, this technique of putting your blocks together, again, stringing them together with your thread really helps, again, improve your accuracy. It just makes it, again, so much flatter and easier to use. So then you decide, again, how you're going to lay out your quilt. In this case, I did 4 blocks. Again, there's 1 block, 2 block, 3 block, 4 block, 4 blocks. And then I put this sashing strip in between and then did another 4 blocks. Or on my original quilt here that I made, again, 33 years ago, then I just put, there's 4 blocks and 4 blocks together. So it forms like those foundation strips form like this little lattice strip in between, which I thought was cute. And then again, I put in some borders and that's it. Very simple quilt. I'm actually going to go over some quilting ideas in a couple of weeks. That it will give you time to finish your string quilt. And again, you just make blocks and blocks and blocks. And then when you have leftover, maybe it's a quilt for you. It just works so good. It's so fun to make. And this is where, too, I use up, again, everything. So in my needle, I have a full bobbin here, but in my needle, this is what I use in my Janome bobbin saver here. All these little bits of bobbin thread left over when I'm embroidering. And then I always get that low bobbin sensor alert, and I always end up with a little bit of bobbin thread left over. Well, great, I don't worry about it. This is what I use. Or do we have, again, little leftover bits of all these random colors? Well, again, it doesn't matter what we're going to piece with, we're not going to see that thread. So use up all those random bobbins. Do you see what I've done here? That this is the large spool cap I've inverted and made like this little shelf. Then I put my bobbin here and then my medium spool cap. So this way, and I snug it up here so I don't have to worry about the thread wrapping around the spool pin. But this way I use up all this little bobbin thread. I don't have to take the time to unwind all of these bobbins in order to get then an empty bobbin. I instead use up all these random little colors of thread. And again, it won't matter because you're all just piecing it together. So you have no idea what color of thread is underneath all of this. It won't matter. You won't see it. So that's a great way to, again, use up all your bobbin thread, use up all your little scraps. It's a really fun project to make at any time. And again, would make a great like charity quilt or a great, a great gift. I'm just trying to oh, geez. I'm just trying to, oh gosh. I'm just trying to rotate my camera. And I swear things change. I must have hit the wrong button. Oh, there we go. Okay. Oh, panic. Yes. Okay. Lovely. Okay. Wonderful. So thank you everyone so much for joining me today. Again, I'll be back in a couple of weeks. I think it's at the end of the month is when I'm going to show you some quilting ideas for your string quilt that you could apply to any quilt ultimately. But it's really, really fun. So thank you everyone so much for joining me today. I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.